Ben Stein, he was a teacher, right? Okay, I think I remember that now. All right, don't tell him. The trivia. What was the song Matthew Broderick? I was standing for him. For Matthew Broderick, like not a body double. That was the other one. Mike Myers. What's it? For God's sakes, the thing he did. Oh, for the love of love. Austin Powers. I showed you that picture, right? I'll put it on here and show you that when I was a body double and Mike Myers cracked.
Oh yeah, put your picture down. You look so cute.
Anyway, but I was just for Matthew Broderick on Gadget, Inspector Gadget. That's the name of the movie. I remember now. Jeez, Michael. Yeah, but Matthew Broderick. Okay, what's the song that he sang? Not you. You can't say it, Sky. When he got on the parade, man, he's on a bus or something. He's standing up and he's singing a song. Who remembers how quick? See who gets that one first. Let's see. I don't know why I'm doing that. See who gets that first. Oh yeah, Sean Penn ordering a pizza to class. That sounds cool. That's something I would probably do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, nobody got the song. Pete did. You gotta know that one. Oh, everybody's trying to type real fast. Keep looking. Ooh, nobody got the song.
I don't know. It's like
everybody's grounded. Now, if I can remember that. Oh, come on, kids. What's the song he was singing on the parade? Parade? Parade thing.
What movie are you talking about?
There's only one song, bro. The one that he was singing in the parade, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I think he's like on a float, like a road parade or something. I don't know what kind of parade it was, but he's standing up and he's singing a song. See if anybody gets that. Oh, come on. There you go, Diz. Well, it's about time, brah. Oh, Chance, come on, bro.
Twist and Shout?
Twist and Shout, the Beatles song. Good job there, brah. Guys, gotta remember that was classic, man. That was classic. Okay. There you go. She got it. Patty J. Okay. Before he gets here, the CDC, 3.7 million births in the U.S. last year, far below replacement level.
Michael, James is here.
Yes. Okay. Let me get out of here and let him take a let's see. All right.
We read all about you on your About, James, so you're introduced.
Yeah, so we got all the niceties out of the way so we can go right into it.
Hey, I see. Can you hear me fine, I hope?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. I see that there's also another James on here. Is that the case?
Well, he's the owner of the station, so.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Spectacular name as far as I'm concerned.
Well, thank you for getting up so early because we're both on the West Coast here. I know it's kind of
I'm on fire, and if you guys are ready to have a breakfast of WHO word salad, I would really love to just dive into an introduction to your new fascist overlords. Is that something that you folks might be ready for? Because this is going to be brutal. This is going to be absolutely brutal.
Well, our chat is good, and they're ready. So
brutal. I can handle. We can handle that. Okay. I did something to that one time. And I stopped it. I shouldn't go on. You guys want to hear anymore? Maybe I should do it too early. No, bring it. So yes, they are.
Okay, let James talk. He's going to say.
So the floor is yours, my dear friend.
Okay. Feel free to interrupt and give opinions and all that sort of stuff. I'm going to share my screen if that's all cool.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what we're talking about is the latest version. I hope everyone can see this. The latest version of, it's a mouthful. Like I said, get ready for word salad. The World Health Organization back in April had their 5th meeting of the drafting group. Of the intergovernmental negotiating body to draft and negotiate a WHO convention agreement or otherwise international instrument on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. And even though they did a good job of hiding it, I think they were busy having a nice argument. And what happened in that meeting, which was at the beginning of April, is they said, okay, look, everybody, calm down. We're not getting anywhere. All of you can submit documents and text by April 22nd, and they promised to have this document by May 22nd, which was like the second day of their World Health Assembly. And they did provide an unedited draft of it, which I've been reporting on for about 10 days or so. And on Friday, which I think was the second, they finally officially published the Bureau's text of the WHO Convention, Agreement, or other international instrument on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. I call it the Hookah Plus because they got to be smoking something if they think we're going to go for this. And so the first two words of this, the Bureau's text, should tell you everything that you need to know about what's going on here. They're building a better bureaucracy, a better and bigger and stronger and more powerful self-serving bureaucracy. And there's a lot here. There's really no way, even in 2 hours, we're going to get through all of this. But what I would like to do is give a quick summary of, in the table of contents, chapter 1. We'll just skim the sugary sweet propaganda. And so I don't want to give anybody diabetes, right? But they start out with the use of terms, right? Genomic sequences, infodemic. All right, you're in the media, Michael. Infodemic means too much information.
Yeah.
Okay. Including false or misleading. But that also, by the negation of that actually says, well, we don't want to give you too much true information either. It just says it means too much information. So that actually gives them authority to withhold some true information. It doesn't say, like, Perry Mason, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Right? Oh, that causes confusion. Okay. They have a One Health approach, which, we're going to touch on it a little bit. The definition of a pandemic, right, means global spread of a pathogen or variant that infects human populations with limited or no immunity through sustained and high transmissibility. Here comes the salad. From person to person. Oh, wait a minute. From person to person. So, not from animal to person, but, they got to fix their definition. Overwhelming health systems with severe morbidity and high mortality and causing social and economic disruptions, all of which require effective national and global collaboration and coordination for its control. All right. Well, everybody's been saying that we've been in a pandemic for the last, couple of years. Overwhelming health systems with severe morbidity and high mortality. So 0.00 something percent over the past couple of years would have been defined as high mortality, right? Here's what this thing is all about. Pandemic-related products.
Oh boy.
This document is not a treaty about people's health. This is a venture capital prospectus for investors.
Wow.
It means products that may be needed for pandemic prevention, preparedness, response, or they added the or recovery. They don't mean recovery of a sick person. That is not what that word means. They're not defining it, but if you understand the way they use it, recovery means recovery of your healthcare system. Okay, which may include, without limitation, diagnostics, stick something up your nose, therapeutics, give yourself some run death scare or midazolam, medicines, it doesn't say natural medicines, vaccines, personal protective equipment, syringes. What do you do with syringes? What are those for? And all right, maybe some oxygen. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to try to take the oxygen out of the room. Persons in vulnerable situations. Universal health coverage means that all people have access to the full range of quality health services they need. Ooh, am I going to get some chiropractic and acupuncture and herbal tea and aromatherapy and massage therapy and maybe some Rolfing and everything? No, I don't think that's what they mean, right? when and where you need, without financial hardship. Oh, they're going to give it to me for free. That sounds really good. I like that. I'm being facetious, right? It covers the full continuum of, what's an essential health service, right? From health promotion. Now that sounds really good, and I wouldn't mind digging a little deeper into all of that. Okay, so the objective and the scope, we're going to go blowing past. Article 3, respect for human rights, sovereignty, equity, solidarity, transparency, accountability. They give you some options. This one is confusing. Common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities in pandemic prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery of health systems. Okay? This is an investment in your health system, right? Recovery of health systems. Or, I kind of like option C, right? Don't include that. 2 options are presented in option 8. One Health. Now, I don't know if everybody here is down with what One Health is. Here's another helping of word salad. Multi-sectoral and transdisciplinary actions should recognize the interconnection between people, animals, plants, and their shared environment, for which a coherent, integrated, and unified approach should be strengthened and applied with the aim, are you asleep yet? Applied with the aim of sustainability, balancing and optimizing the health of people, animals, and ecosystems, including through, but not limited to, by giving attention to the prevention of epidemics due to pathogens that are resistant to antimicrobial agents and zoonotic diseases. Here's what they want. They want to find boogeymen pathogens under every rock, everywhere you can imagine, as a One Health approach to fearmonger and scare everybody the way they have over the past 4 years. Okay, so they got inclusiveness, science and evidence. Really, evidence. They don't seem to really want to look at evidence. Here you go. All right, who's your daddy? Who's your boss? Central role of the WHO as the directing and coordinating authority on international health work and the leader of multilateral cooperation in global health governance. WHO is fundamental to strengthening, here you go again, pandemic prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery of health systems, not of people, not health of people. Don't let that trick you. And here's one to wrap up chapter 1, proportionality. Public health decisions for preventing, preparing, and for responding to pandemics should be proportionate, such that the benefit of measures implemented outweigh their costs. Is there actually something in here that I could agree to? That you're supposed to look at the risk and the benefit and not just do what they tell you, but analyze it as to whether or not it's worth it? Okay. Now, there's a world of things in here in chapter 2, and let's see if this will work for me. Searching for the word laboratory. Okay. Parties shall take actions to strengthen laboratory biosafety, to prevent misuse and advertent laboratory release of pathogens. The parties shall cooperate with one another and with the support of the WHO to strengthen and maintain public health laboratory and diagnostic capabilities. That is what this is all about. Here's another one. On page 9. One Health surveillance system and to strengthening the laboratory capacity. Page 10. Strengthen surveillance systems and laboratory capacity. Page 11. Sustained national and or regional laboratory capacity, including for genomic sequencing, as well as for analyzing and sharing that information. Strengthening public health laboratory and diagnostic capacities, and public health laboratory biosafety and biosecurity. Let me go up here. Just this is give me a hard time. All right. Each party, through its relevant public health authorities and authorized laboratories, shall, in rapid, systematic, and timely manner, provide pathogens with pandemic potential I think that actually means potential to turn a profit from early infections due to pathogens with pandemic potential or subsequent variants to a laboratory recognized or designated as part of an established WHO coordinated laboratory network. WHO coordinated laboratory network on page 20, right? Access shall be accorded expeditiously by the laboratory recognized or designated as part of an established WHO. Oh, you got an independent lab. You're out of luck, buddy. All right. We want an established WHO coordinated laboratory network. Page 30. Strengthening of health systems and laboratory capacities. Page 36. Laboratory leakage. I haven't heard that phrase before. Laboratory leakage. Okay, I've heard of lab leak, but laboratory leakage sounds like anal. sounds like the side effect of anal leakage. From some of the side effects of these weight loss problems. Okay, and so let me introduce you to. We're going to skip over the whole body of this document because if you've heard this thing called a pandemic treaty, or the long name that I read at the beginning, or a pandemic accord, or by whatever name they might want to call it. Okay. What this really is a framework convention. And the analogy that I give is that of a Christmas tree. It puts in a framework, and the decorations come in later. So if I said, Michael, if it was December and I said, hey, Christmas is right around the corner. How about I go get a Christmas tree, bring it over to your house, and you know what? I'll decorate it for you. Right? At first glance, that sounds like you're getting a deal, right? But what if my idea of how I would want to decorate a Christmas tree really took you by surprise? And it was some god-awful decor on that tree. If you agreed to the framework and you agreed to let me add protocols to your framework convention agreement, and there wasn't anything you could say about it, that might come as a surprise to you. Okay? And so this all starts in chapter 3, but I'm going to back up just a little bit to explain fascism. Okay. The parties agreed to establish a funding mechanism to support implementation of the Hookah Plus. The mechanism should avoid duplication and ensure complementarity and coherence among the utilization of the funds within the mechanism and other existing funds. The mechanisms shall ensure the provision of adequate, accessible, new and additional and predictable financial resources. Does your job provide you with adequate, accessible, new and additional and predictable financial resources? And shall include the following: annual contributions by parties to the Hookah Plus. Now, they don't ever really get around to defining parties, and so we're forced to assume that it means the nations that sign on and become a party to it. But they failed to actually say that. And inter alia means among others, right? So, it could be anybody you want to add to this. All right, so the nations are kicking in some money, but looky here. Contributions from pandemic-related product manufacturers. Can you say pharmaceutical companies and laboratory equipment manufacturers and, contract manufacturers to make whatever the heck it is they're putting in the jabs, and voluntary contributions on top of their annual contributions by the parties and other stakeholders. Okay. Bill and Melinda Gates, the Rotary International gives millions of dollars, believe it or not, to the WHO currently. Okay. Now, if you've ever looked into Mussolini's definition of fascism, it's governments and corporate powers working together hand in hand to beat up on the people. That's the definition, according to Mussolini, of fascism. And I've been saying for quite some time that it's had a 21st century upgrade. All of the non-government organizations, the foundations, charities, all that sort of thing, people would call it whatever they want to call it, 5013C organizations, they have a stake in this. They're stakeholders. And, generally when you take a stake in an organization, you're talking about money. And so this is what they're talking about utilizing to pour money into the operation of this framework convention agreement. And so I'll get into chapter 3. And so the conference of the parties is, established. It shall be comprised of delegates representing the parties of the WHO, but it has all these observers. So to me, that means if you do what you need to do in Article 19, you get a seat at the table.
Like pay to play? It's like that?
Pay to play. Okay. Representatives of the United Nations and its agencies. Okay. Well, the funding of the current WHO, a lot of the money for the WHO is filled in by the United Nations and their various agencies. Right. Nations who are members of the UN, but is not, if they don't sign on to the agreement, they can be an observer, okay? As well as representatives of any state member or observers at the UN that are not a party to the treaty, they can still, come in and participate a little bit. All right, here's where it gets interesting. Representatives of any body or organization, whether national or international, government or non-governmental, so that's all the foundations and such, but all kinds of government agencies can poke their nose in here, private or public sector. So any corporation who wants to play can be a participant, provided that the observers would be admitted upon formal application unless 1/3 of the parties object. So you got to kiss some butt. You got to get everybody to let you in the game. This is George Carlin. It's a club and you ain't in it. I don't think I could donate enough money to be allowed into their little club. Okay. This is who would govern the treaty or amendments or agreement or framework convention. Okay. Only the delegates get to vote, but everybody gets to have an influence on them. Now, this gets a little bit esoteric into the World Health Organization, but if anybody watched any of the goings on from May 21st to the 30th, they had a big old meeting hall that they called the plenary, and then they would have two separate rooms where they would meet Committee A and Committee B. And so they would have a third committee would be created. So this bureaucracy would in some fashion be contained within the WHO and the World Health Assembly, subject to the establishment of such a committee by the World Health Assembly, which is the 194 member nations delegates. Just more bureaucracy. More bureaucracy. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down a little bit more. All talking about how it would work in that third committee within the World Health Organization. And, they could have special meetings and so forth and so on. Scroll down here to the next section. Oh, actually, you know what? I found a little typo in their thing. Here it says that the Conference of the Parties would oversee the bodies referred to in paragraph 9 of this article. And when I scroll down here, I only see 8. Think they got a little typo there, so maybe I should call them and tell them. this is probably what they meant that they would be overseeing. So, who's your daddy, right? Here's who's really going to be controlling this. There's an implementation and compliance committee, a panel of experts to provide scientific advice. Scientific advice is a stupid word. Okay. Science is a process. You could give expert advice, but when someone gives you advice, the scientific process requires you to challenge it and see if it's actually appropriate. So that phrase, bugs the daylights out of me when people talk like that. The Pandemic Related Products Expert Committee. You think there's going to be any corporate people on that? And the Benefit Sharing Expert Committee requires a little bit of an explanation. In one of the earlier articles, they want to set up a pathogen access and benefit sharing system. And what that means is if they find a pathogen, they immediately need to send the details about it to the central hub in Switzerland. And, any benefits that might come from that pathogen, you got to ask yourself, what benefits could come from a pathogen? Well, you could either develop a medication, a drug, or some kind of jab. And, it's a profit-making venture. So, they have to give reports to the conference. So the nations would have to report on a regular basis. Well, here's the one that is of concern. Information on legislative, executive, and administrative measures, good practices, or other measures taken to implement this. Now, that one sentence is part of the reason why I'm encouraging everyone to be clear that this treaty or framework convention, this will shock you, and don't think that I've gone over to the dark side. But Tedros has been saying over and over and over that this agreement will not take away national sovereignty. And I agree with him. He is actually saying something that is correct. It's what he's leaving out. It's not the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. He's leaving out the parts that people don't want to hear. And so in the amendments to the international health regulations, Russia, and somebody's got some noise going on. I don't know if it's possible to mute that out. That would be appreciated. In the amendments to the international health regulations, Russia proposed an amendment to Article 4 that essentially says all of the nations will be obligated to pass legislation that would empower a government agency called the National IHR Focal Point to be given the authority to implement, whatever the WHO says. And so what they're doing is this sneaky little trick saying, well, we're not going to tell you what to do. We're going to keep track of your legislative, executive, and administrative measures because you're going to change your laws to implement what these agreements say. And, you've got to do that within, your constitutional limitations. But as we've seen over the last 4 years, our own people are very likely to dramatically, trample the rights that are supposed to be protected by the Bill of Rights and dramatically exceed any authority that the Constitution of the federal government or the individual states have ever given them. So the WHO isn't going to stomp on your sovereignty. They're going to respect your sovereignty because they know your own people will abuse you. And they'll probably do it in an unconstitutional way. But how do you stop that? They pass laws, that give them immunity, give them authority. They're unconstitutional. But until you've been abused and you've been harmed, and so then you have standing and you can bring a court case and fight it all the way up to the Supreme Court of the state or the federal government and get that law struck down, they can do a lot of damage for a lot of years. So these people are savvy. They know what they're doing. They know how to get around our less sophisticated, less slimy, awareness of what they're doing. These guys are good in a bad way, meaning, they know what they're doing. They know how to work around the law. And so when people say things like, oh, the treaty is attacking our sovereignty, no, not really. It really isn't. It's getting our own people to abuse their fellow Americans or any other nation. Very, very sneaky. If anybody says that this treaty is an attack on sovereignty, it's not. It's a venture capital laboratory network building investment plan to build out a fascist cabal, to create a cartel, to build out the infrastructure, to fearmonger people by looking under every rock for a pathogen that they can trigger another emergency behind. And so I'll go through this a little bit more. They want to have their implementation and compliance committee. Now, I have to admit, this one was a little bit surprising to me. A lot of people are out there saying, oh, they're going to sanction nations and WHO is going to force everybody to do everything. But you got to realize this is not where they're going to make people take jabs or drugs or lockdowns or any of that stuff. You're not going to find that in this document. And a lot of people, unfortunately, who are on our side have been saying that, oh, the treaty's going to do this, the treaty's going to... No, these people are sneaky. They're hiding all of that in the proposed amendments to the international health regulations, and the fact, with what I said earlier, that they're going to get your federal, state, or local governments to be doing their dirty work for them. So what this says in here is kind of interesting. Okay. The Implementation and Compliance Committee shall be facilitative in nature. Oh, we're here to help. And they'll function in a manner that is transparent, non-adversarial, and non-punitive. So if anybody says, oh, they're going to be sanctioning people, that's not really how crony capitalism and fascism works. If you pay to play, the funding will head in your direction. So it's all going to be a bunch of friends greasing each other's palms. It's all going to be, oh, you're in the club, let's get you a contract. And if you go along to get along, more money will flow into your nation or your corporation or your foundation or whatever you've invested in. And if you're all in the club and you're all in on the meetings, you've got not necessarily insider trading, but inside information as to which direction the money's going to be flowing, which nation it's going to go to, which, laboratory equipment. I've got a friend who goes to as many of these types of meetings as she can get her way into in Europe. And she overheard a conversation, somebody talking about like the latest equipment to do the PCR, which is not a test, it's a process, it's a laboratory process. They just make copies of whatever they find. And they said, these machines, cost over $100,000, but they can do thousands of, they can process thousands of samples at 13 cents a piece. And so if you've paid 100,000 plus for that kind of equipment, you can charge more than 13 cents. God knows how much you might be able to make for each sample that's been processed. You need throughput. You need people going out there, sticking swabs in people's noses, sticking them up their butt, going to their veterinarian's office and sticking it in your dog's butt and your cat's butt, or, going to your chicken coop and putting it in the bedding, or a CAFO, which is a concentrated animal feeding operation, and stick it in the big old pile of poop or the, pool of excrement from a swine operation, or, go to your hospital where the, best pathogens are, go to your sewage treatment plant, find any kind of genetic sequence that you can run through these machines, do the sequencing on them, which is not, they don't find the entire genome. They find a little snippet and they pretend with their computer programs that they've modeled, some new pathogen. Oh, we found some new meat. Hey, let's go down the LA River and see what we find. Right? I bet you could find something there. Oh, wow. Maybe we better send that to Geneva, have a company turn that into a benefit, a profitable pandemic response product, get that back to that community and track and trace everybody who was anywhere near that thing and lock it all down and jab them all up. And, oh, look at that. We stopped, a potential pandemic. And people just get sicker and sicker and sicker. And these people are sicker and sicker and sicker. And so this is not the kind of compliance that people think of when you say the word compliance. They want to have a panel of experts to provide scientific advice. Again, it drives me crazy, makes me want to scream. There is no such thing as scientific advice. There's advice. And then you apply the scientific method to it. And okay, great. You got an opinion. Can you back it up? Is it real? Does it work? The advice that they gave for the care that people should, take a Tylenol, go home. And if you turn blue, then that's not scientific advice. That's really bad advice. All right. So there's a lot of things in here. But, here's the one thing that they like. They like the zoonotic risks. They believe that everything is coming from animals. And while, maybe there are some problems with animals, possibly, well, you should be treating those animals better. Maybe they won't be sick. But what they really want to do, I believe, and we've, we all, on some level, I'll speak for myself, should be ashamed of what we've allowed to happen over the past decades. They find bird flu in one bird in a poultry operation, and they murder the entire flock. And, I'm just waiting for them to say, oh, we found a pathogen in a rest home, so we got to kill all the old people. Well, wait a minute. That's what they've been doing. Put everybody on a ventilator. And so, they want to go around, collect and evaluate all of the recent information and scientific knowledge, right? This theory is completely and totally flawed. It's being challenged by a lot of good people, but, their attitude is, let's go lift up every rock, go into every nook and cranny, take a sample, throw it through these, laboratories to, part of the problem is they were able to do this in the developed nations where they had the testing capacity and they were able to print enough money or digitally create enough money to just, buy all kinds of test kits and trick people into thinking, someone who was healthy, but in order to go to an event or go to work or whatever, every day or every week, they had to have something stuck up their nose. Well, the more tests you do, the more false positives you get, the more cases you have of people who are asymptomatic. Oh, I thought I was feeling good, but this guy stuck something up my nose and told me that I have a disease. I can't live my life now, right? That's what they want to do on a massive scale in Africa and other nations because they failed to be able to do that in impoverished nations because they didn't have the infrastructure. Okay. Pandemic-related products expert committee, right? Well, here's where the money's going to be made. I wonder who's going to be on that committee. You think it's going to be people who are going to say, oh, this company and that. One of the things that I have not been able to find in here, and I admit I haven't had a chance to just totally read this 10 times to see that I'm missing it. What is the protocol by which the contracts are going to be given out? I don't see anything about the protocols for deciding where the money or how the money is divvied up. This is crony capitalism with no rules. Where's the audit trail of where all the money went? And then they talk about the benefits sharing expert committee. Okay, this is essentially what happened in my view, what happened in South Africa during this last couple of years, when between South Africa and Botswana, when they quote unquote identified a new Omicron variant, and they immediately did what they were supposed to do. They told the WHO, hey, look, we found something new. Everybody ought to know about it. They got spanked because a lot of nations shut down travel and trade to South Africa and Botswana and elsewhere. And they were like, hey, wait a minute, we're doing the right thing and you're harming us. Well, it obviously didn't stop the transmission of the ability to create a genomic sequence with any mix of parts that you want. And so they have been pushing for, now, wait a minute, we sent you the genomic sequence, and Pfizer and Moderna made boosters based on that information. And it's like, well, if you want, nations to share this, I think ridiculous information, and you're going to profit from it, you got to share some of those benefits. And so, basically they want 20% of all of the products to be kicked back to the WHO. And so moving on, Article 26, the Secretariat, fancy word for secretary. Okay, really, I believe. But these are the bureaucrats. These are the ones who are really in control. This is the WHO's deep state. And so option number one is, the Secretariat, WHO, just let the WHO do it. Or, oh my goodness, right? I'm just going to go through this because this is bureaucracy central. The Secretariat for the Hookah Plus is hereby established. The Secretariat functions of the Hookah Plus shall be provided by the WHO, which sounds, very similar to what the previous option said, in cooperation with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, the World Organization for Animal Health, which I kind of like their acronym, it's WOA, and the United Nations Environment Program. The heads of the respective organizations will determine the modalities for their cooperation in discharging the Secretariat functions under the agreement. Such modalities shall be provided by the Conference of the Parties at its first session. Oh, you don't get to know what the rules are. They'll make it up on the first session. So you got to agree to this before you find out what they're doing. Now, these four groups, the WHO, the FAO, the WOA, and the Environmental Program, they refer to that as the quadripartite. It would be to provide administrative and logistic support for the purpose of the implementation of this agreement and to make arrangements for the sessions of the Conference of the Party, to transmit reports and other information, to provide support for the parties, particularly, and there's a lot of this, particularly developing country parties all throughout this document. And I'll make a bad joke here about economies in transition in implementing the WHO CA Plus, including the compilation and communication of information required in accordance with all the provisions, to prepare reports, cooperate and coordinate with the UN, and to perform any other functions. So we're just talking about massive bureaucracy with all of these various organizations. They want it to be in alignment with other agreements. Here's where it gets a little bit interesting. There's a concept in these types of agreements called reservations or rejections, where, we agreed to this for the most part, but not that part. And so they either want to say, nope, take it or leave it, all or nothing. Or maybe one of the articles will specifically say that you could reject it. And now this one is just really weird. Yeah, you can make reservations, but they can't be incompatible with the object of it. So, that's almost a contradiction in terms. Confidentiality and data protection, while this sounds good, right? This actually is as non-transparent as you can imagine. Any exchange of data shall respect the privacy. This could give them the opportunity to say, oh, well, no, we have to respect privacy. We can't tell you stuff. Here's where we start getting into some of the things that are concerning. I mean, not that all of that wasn't. If a nation were to join, they're in for 2 years, can't leave, right? Hotel California, you can't check out. You can give a notice, but it won't take effect until 1 year later. And so everybody who wants in is in for at least 3 years, or so it seems. Only the delegates from the nations vote. Now, here's where I feel that the Christmas tree analogy is what's important here. They can amend this document after the fact. And down here, this is a little bit of a contradiction in terms, I believe. An amendment adopted in accordance with paragraph 3 shall enter into force on the 90th day, blah, 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 after the acceptance of 2/3 of the parties. And here it says, after the date in which the party deposits its at the depository. So a little bit of confusion there. They can add annexes to it as well. And so I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. The last thing here says several member states have proposed text 4 or suggested the inclusion of annexes, but they're not here. Where are they? And so some articles that I've seen online have said that there's actually a 208-page document, which is a compilation, which would have all of those annexes in there. And so coming back up here, this is the thing that led me to the Christmas tree analogy. They can add protocols to this, and there's nothing in here that I see that gives anybody, any nation, the opportunity to reject them. Okay? And it also says, let's see if I can find it. If anybody is aware of what happened in, I think it was 1913, with the Federal Reserve being passed in the middle of the night or something, can be adopted by a 2/3 majority vote of the parties who were present and voting. I don't see anything about a quorum. Oh, let's get 3 nations together and 2 of them say yes, and we've got a protocol. Now, a little scary to me. And so thanks for having about an hour's worth of word salad. My concern about what's going on here is none of this is about actually making people healthy. This is about, somebody's got their mic rustling again.
Oh, it's me, James. I just
Yeah,
wanna-
it's fine. It just makes a noise sometimes.
we got till 6 o'clock. That's our time here. So
Yeah. So, thanks for putting up with that brutal, just, gobbledygook. And so one of the things that somebody said to me in a message, and they meant it in a nice, pardon me?
Oh, I was just telling Family Low, yes. She wanted to know if you were live, and I said, yes, you're live.
Pinch my cheek there. Somebody messaged me, and they meant it in a nice way. They were just curious. They were asking. They said, Jim, what are your credentials? And I said, I've read the goddamn documents. And so, this is the position of power with our political officials, our public servants. is I can pretty much guarantee you that not a single one of them has spent this past weekend reading this document. They don't know what they don't know. And the condescension that they start with of, oh, it's not going to be this, or it's going to be that, or it's not what they say. Tedros says it's not going to take away your sovereignty. I agree. That's not what this is.
It's the people. Mm-hmm.
It's a fascist cabal. I mean, look at all of the committees and the parties and the observers, and who in the heck are all of these people going to be? These are the oligarchs who want to create a legally binding agreement that would build a bureaucracy that, many of those officials, the delegates and such, may very well have diplomatic immunity, but they're going to be cutting deals in back rooms, moving around billions of dollars. And what is the purpose? The purpose is to have laboratory capacity so that they can have teams of people sticking swabs wherever they can to bring it back to the lab, get that throughput going on these high-tech machines that can do all kinds of PCR processing. It's not a test, right? It doesn't mean you're sick. Take the snippets of genomes from God knows what, have a computer program, cobble them together and say, ooh, we found a sequence that's different, send it off to the hub in Switzerland. They're arguing about who gets the intellectual property. They don't want to, Pfizer, Moderna, and all the companies, they don't necessarily want to give up total control to local manufacturing plants, and God knows what kind of crap they're going to make, right? And well, they didn't have any quality control to begin with. They use this excuse of, oh, well, we don't want to give away the intellectual property because maybe they won't make it the right way, like anybody cares, right? And so then they have one section that is community healthcare, right? Well, they want to train all these community health workers that they can parachute in or emergency come in. This is the stuff you see in the movies, like Contagion. The people in the hazmat suits coming in.
Yeah.
This, in my opinion, may not essentially be backed by the Department of Defense, but in their global health security agenda, right? They've separate from all of this, the National Defense Authorization Act has pledged $1 billion a year for global health security, their global health security agenda. And so, they're basically colonizing through crony capitalism under the guise of, well, we need security because we're finding all these pathogens everywhere. Man, is this a sophisticated scam? And so the reason why I'm pushing to get people to pay attention to this now, if all of the smart people here take the time and look through this document and understand what it is, I can guarantee you that the people who are supporting it don't even know what they don't know what they're supporting. Wow. The WHO is so good. This has got there's nothing in here that says, oh, a person is sick, and so you have their doctor work with them and you make all these, things available. No, it's drugs and jabs, testing drugs and jabs, put a circle around, do a ring and make sure nobody can leave, track and trace everybody. Oh, wait a minute. There's a little bit of an uprising in Hong Kong. I wonder if we can find any pathogens in Hong Kong. Okay, where is there a problem going on? Where do we need to control the health of all of these people? Okay, everybody needs to pay attention. I have faith that regular people can read these documents, as brutally bureaucratically dense and mind-numbingly, food salady they are. You go, where does it say there's anything in this for me, right? Where is the vote of the people to approve the protocols? where do we elect the people who are running the show, right? This is creating a cabal to run a cartel to build out the fear-mongering infrastructure that then can be used. That's not an attack on sovereignty. They're not going to have sanctions on nations who don't do that testing. They're just not going to get the money.
Right.
Okay. And so, thank you so much. Good morning.
Our chat is
Happy Monday
enjoying
to you.
Yeah.
You're awake now, right, guys? Wow.
Yeah, it's so funny because Family Love said, "Is he alive?" Yes, he's alive. Yeah. So
James,
As long as I can possibly be, I plan on being alive. Yeah.
you being alive, I know we're all there, right?
I have
The
one
thing
question, James.
is-
Was there a line that they took out that did kind of sort of bring the human element, the compassion element in? They crossed off. You remember?
Well, the first part of it is sickeningly sweet, propaganda. It talks about sovereignty and human rights and equity and all that sort of stuff. And see, here's where, if I can get this point across, thanks for the question. This is not where the abuse is going to be found in print. Okay, if you look at the proposed amendments to the international health regulations, they have been completely silent since December. All of those documents were submitted by September 30th. This is not the agreement that we just went over, right? And there's 197 pages, and there are 307 proposed amendments. They did make those available in December. I've been reporting on them since then, but there has not been a single revised edition, no version 2.0 or such, no revised draft, none of the sort. Now, one of my concerns about that is the bulk of what is in that document, the boring stuff, really, really boring stuff, is all about building out core capacities. And so it's all for the pharmaceutical hospital emergency industrial complex. Oh, you've got to have more testing, more laboratories, more quarantine facilities, whatever you want. And my concern is that the stuff that was in there that was really egregiously bad, right? The changing recommendations to being obligations so that, whatever the Director General said nations had to do, the changing the scope to be, and this is the one that we'll keep, in Article 2 of the amendments, they want to change the scope of the regulations to not be in response to emergencies, but to be in response to the potential for an emergency. So if we find, if they find some polio in the sewage system in New York City, nobody's sick. It has the potential, right? Article 3, taking away the dignity, human rights, and fundamental freedoms of people. That's in this document. Right. It's right there. They say, "Oh, what are you people talking about? We have it in the treaty or the Framework Convention. We have respect for your human rights, dignity, and fundamental freedoms." That's true. These people are playing a really good linguistic word game. What I think they want from the amendments, and what's a possibility that might happen, is those types of things which are egregiously horrible, taking away our rights, making it mandatory, all that sort of stuff. What might happen is they go, "Oh, well, that's not in this version." And so by moving the Overton window to, "Oh my God, they're going to do all these crazy things," and then they go, "Oh, that's not in there now," right? If they drop this in January and we finally get a look at it in April, like they did last year, and we look at it and they go, "Oh, well, we just want a global digital health certification network so that you have a vaccine certificate You actually have an old school one right here. This is a vaccine passport, right? This form,
Yes.
right? This form, you know, old school 1972, I think that is. That's